If you're picked in the first round, you have certain expectations placed on you. Players picked in that category are expected to be heavy contributors to the team that selects them. Your role on the team is to be a foundational piece, a player that will rest on the team for a long time. In 2010, this wasn't any different. This was the year after the Saints won a Super Bowl, and it was a turn of a new decade. And like every single year, teams were looking to improve their roster. Of course, though, they didn't always succeed. Like every draft, the 2010 draft had their busts, they had those surprise superstars, and they had their downright bizarre players. In this video, I'll be looking at picks 24 to 16 of the 2010 draft. I'll be going into full detail on each player, relaying the stars, the busts, the what-ifs, all. Now, if you're wondering where picks 32 to 24 are, they're in part 1. I made a part 1 version of this. If you haven't watched it, check it out if you have time. But for now, we're gonna enter and review the next tier of players in this draft. Be ready.
23, Packers, Brian Beluga. Brian Beluga slipped down to the 20s and the Packers snapped him up. The biggest hole was on the line, and taking a supposed top 15 pick was a success. Victory lap for everyone. He had one of the most interesting rookie seasons, especially for a tackle. He started on the bench and got promoted to a starter in week 5. Then after that, he got named to an all-rookie team and then proceeded to aid the Packers to a Super Bowl. All-rookie team and a Super Bowl ring in 1 year? Damn, the future's gleaming bright for this dude. Unfortunately, in 2012, he injured his hip, and then the next season, he ended up tearing his ACL. The injuries were piling up for him. Back-to-back season-ending injuries after a stellar rookie season had rendered his Packers career a little shaky. He entered year 4, having not played a single snap in almost 2 years. And in that 2014 season, he had a solid year, aiding a really good Packers offensive line. This was all the front office needed to see, and they handed him a 5-year, $35 million deal. Throughout that second deal, in 2015 and 16, he was decent enough until, for the second time in his career, he tore his ACL, which was in 2017. Despite that though, he still started 3 years on the Packers before he left in 2020 and spent his twilight years on the Chargers. Eventually he got cut and retired. Beluga was solid. He had a long and illustrious career in Green Bay, but he wasn't exactly a star. He was serviceable, but like any average lineman, he got pinned to blame for a lot of things. He had a long history with a lot of serious injuries too. Overall, he was a solid blocking piece for an O-line that protected Aaron Rodgers through a successful stretch for the Green Bay Packers. I'll give this a C, maybe a C+. Pick 22, Damaryius Thomas. The Broncos made a flurry of draft moves to get to this point. They already had the 25th pick, which they used on Tim Tebow. We already talked about that, but they also started off the night with pick 11. From there, they dropped to 24 through 2 trades and let back up to 22 to snatch the first wide receiver off the board in Thomas. The Broncos had just shipped off Brandon Marshall for 2 seconds and did indeed need to have that wide receiver with #1 upside. Unfortunately, the defining trait for Thomas's first few seasons were injuries. He came onto the pre-draft process with a broken foot and was unable to participate in the combine. And despite having a stellar debut, he would suffer through an injury-riddled rookie season. A forearm, a concussion, and an injured ankle all kept him sidelined. The worst, though, was yet to come. In that following offseason, he would pop an Achilles tendon and would be listed as improbable to return for the entire 2012 season. Even when he defied all expectations and worked his way off the PUP list, he'd end up breaking his finger and would be forced to miss extensive time for the season. But even then, when he was finally able to shake off the injury bug and get onto the field, he actually was able to show his ability. Now, it was a slow process, as he first got playing time during that maniac Tebow insanity run that plagued all of Denver for that winter. Go back to pick 25 if you need further context. He only had 76 yards over the next 4 games, but after that, he exploded. He had an 144-yard game against the Dolphins, and in the playoffs, he had a game-winning 80-yard touchdown, flashing his all-pro potential at the end of the season. The next season was welcomed with the arrival of Peyton Manning, and with how electric Damaryius Thomas was at the end of the season, you bet Broncos fans were absolutely giddy to see how he'd perform with the best quarterback in the league. And he had a breakout season, blazing onto onto the scene with by far his best year yet. 94 catches with 1,434 yards and 10 touchdowns, earning himself his first Pro Bowl selection. The Broncos went 13-3, ending the year on a 10-game winning streak and earned a first-round bye. Unfortunately, after an overtime interception in the divisional round, the Broncos lost and were eliminated. It was a shame. This team was good enough to go to the Super Bowl, and unfortunately, they fell just short. But don't even worry about that, because the next year, and I'm pretty sure you already know what I mean, record-breaking season for Peyton Manning and borderline stupefied. This was the year Peyton Manning would go for 55 touchdowns. Thomas had another 1,400 yards and a 14-touchdown year, cementing himself as a top receiver in the league again. Unfortunately, this was also the year they got absolutely dog-walked 44-8 in the Super Bowl. Damn, another disappointing year. Still, it was impressive individually for Damaryius Thomas, and I mean, there's no way he can surpass this, right? He had 1,400 yards, he played in a record-breaking offense. I mean, I can't imagine him topping this in any scenario. There's no way he does. Right? Nope. He topped that with career highs in both receiving yards and catches, with 1,600 yards and 111 catches. Again, the Broncos were the first seed in the NFL, but once more, they ended up losing in the divisional round. Wow. He had it all. He was a top 5 receiver on a consistently elite team, but it seemed like year after year, ever since he entered his prime, he couldn't get that Super Bowl ring. I mean, the first year Manning came in 2013, I think. They lost early in the playoffs despite having a great record. The next season, despite the record-breaking offense they had, they got absolutely destroyed 44-8 in the Super Bowl. And then year 3, his best year yet, despite getting the #1 seed, they got beat in the divisional. Every single year, the Super Bowl was out of his reach. In 2015, though, something changed. His prayers were answered. He earned 1,300 yards, but more importantly, the Denver Broncos and Peyton Manning on his last leg managed to trek their way to a Super Bowl victory. Damaryius Thomas earned his first and only ring and was at the top of the world. Unfortunately, this is where his career dipped down. With Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler leaving, a new problem was introduced: quarterback play. I mean, the first year without him, he earned 1,000 yards through the air, but slowly and surely, it dipped lower and lower and lower, until eventually he was dealt to the Houston Texans for a 7th-round pick. His career was over there. He had some stints elsewhere, but they didn't amount to anything really, and he sort of just retired. Man, the Broncos got a good one. An absolute beast in his prime and the perfect guy for Manning to throw to in his twilight years. That offense was practically unstoppable too, especially with his running mate Emmanuel Sanders. I also have to mention that Thomas did pass away in 2021? Jeez, so that was like 4 years ago. Oh my god. I always liked the guy. He seemed like a great dude, and rest in peace, man. I give this pick an A. Pick 21, Jermaine Gresham. The Bengals, trying to add some talent around Carson Palmer, decided to take an explosive talent out of Oklahoma in Jermaine Gresham. Gresham performed decently in his rookie year, as he tallied about 500 yards. In his next 2, he did pretty well too, for a tight end at least. He got selected to 2 Pro Bowls and peaked at 737 yards. He didn't really do anything besides this. After that season, he never reached 500 yards again, and after 2 subpar years, he moved to the Cardinals. After that season, his career basically died. This one is pretty cut and dry. Gresham overall was mediocre at the tight end position. I mean, at his peak, he was a Pro Bowler and had 737 yards, but again, wasn't that electric superstar. That's not the end of the world until you consider that he was not only a top 21 pick, but that the Bengals passed up on Rob Gronkowski to pick Gresham. That's nasty work right there. He never really reached the potential of being the explosive elite receiving tight end, and when Tyler Eifert came in, he was relegated to a reduced role. A bit of a disappointment. I'd give it a C+.
Pick 20, Kareem Jackson, quarterback. The Texans were lacking at corner. The loss of Dunter Robinson left a massive hole at the position, meaning they were kind of forced to select a guy on the boundary right here. Fortunate for them, it was a deep cornerback class, and they had their pick of the litter. They ended up going with Kareem Jackson out of Alabama, a speedy, tight boundary guy that reset their cornerback position. His rookie year was not the greatest. He had his moments as he picked off Eli Manning for his first career interception, but overall, I mean, it was really bad. PFF gave him a -10 rating in coverage. Yeah,
That's right, a -10 rating. In his sophomore season, he had to fight a lot more as the Texans had rearranged some things on the defensive side of the ball. He had a slightly better season as he was relegated to a cornerback 2 role, and the Texans actually made the playoffs. Still though, that year was pretty bad. PFF only graded him slightly higher, and he was still allowing majority of his completions. In 2012 though, he put it all together. He had a Pro Bowl caliber season that year, and not only did his success rate leap to 59%, his passer rating when targeted sunk down to under 70. He legit played like a stud that season. A career high in passes defense, interceptions, and a record of 12-4. Jeez. Things were actually looking good for Kareem Jackson and the Texans. And I know they got limited in the divisional, but like the future was bright. I mean, with how good they were definitely in position to be a consistent force in the playoffs. And yeah, I mean, they could take a step back or whatever, but like, who cares? With this team, they literally just went 12-4. I mean, how bad could it get? Yeah, they went 2-14. Yeah, what do you want me to say? I don't really know. After this season, until about 2018, there was a long string of solid, at best, seasons from Kareem Jackson. At the beginning of the 2018 season, though, Bill O'Brien said he would switch Jackson over to free agency. Jackson played what would be his last season in Houston, then proceeded to sign a 3-year deal with the Broncos. But after 2 seasons, the Broncos declined his option and gave him a massive pay cut. They tossed a couple more 1-year deals at him before eventually waiving him. As of today, he's still currently active, and I think the most recent place he's played is the Buffalo Bills. I don't think he's still on that team as of July 10th, 2025, and I think he's probably done for the rest of his career. Back when the Texans picked him up all the way back in 2010, they wanted to fix their cornerback roles. They didn't do that. Didn't even come close to it, if I'm being honest. Jackson, being the second cornerback off the board, was a guy that they hoped to be cornerback 1 for them. And while he wasn't that always or ever really, and definitely started out rough, he was a really solid piece in their secondary for like a little bit under a decade. While it isn't what you'd want for a top 20 pick, it isn't the worst you could bargain for. I'll give this a C+. Pick 19, Sean Witherspoon. Witherspoon was the do-it-all linebacker that the Falcons hoped could bolster a defensive unit that they added a lot to in that offseason. His rookie season looked solid, and sure, he didn't come blazing out the gate, but he showed promise while putting up 42 tackles and a sack. Next year, he maximized his potential and put up some ridiculous totals in his sophomore season. 115 tackles and 4 sacks, earning himself a captain's badge. He had another solid statistical season with 95 tackles, 3 sacks, and an interception. He was a leader and a borderline star. It looked like he was on a fast track to becoming a foundational piece for the Falcons. The next year, though, he missed the last 10 games of the season with a shoulder injury. He still put up great numbers in those 5.5 games, and even though he struggled with injuries this prior season, Witherspoon is certainly talented enough to bounce back from this. Right? Torn Achilles. Yeah, that following season, gone. His entire 4th season, done. Couldn't play a snap in that season. Worst part was his contract year. His rookie deal was over, and the Falcons, with his injuries, decided not to sign him back. He ended up going on a 1-year deal to the Cardinals, and he got literally no time at all. Only had about 20 tackles for the season, and then made his way back to the Falcons. And he was actually doing pretty good. He wasn't putting up ridiculous numbers on the team, but he had a good presence in the locker room. He carved out his role in the rotation. He was getting good burn. He was doing this and torn Achilles. Week 4. Oh my God. Again? Yeah, his career was basically over, and after spending another year not doing that much, he hung up the cleats. There's no way I'm blaming the Falcons for this one. As a 19th pick, he looked in prime position to be a foundational linebacker piece since his 2nd season. 2 ruptured Achilles and a bunch of major injuries completely ruined that. I mean, it's kind of sad. This dude never could really get the injuries in check. I'd give this one a B-. Pick 18, Steelers, Markuice Pouncey. Coming out of Florida, you couldn't get much better at the interior offensive line position than Pouncey. And believe me when I tell you that the Steelers needed that desperately. The line struggled a lot last season, and they were praying that Pouncey was going to be the antidote to that issue. And I mean, you guys probably know how good he was in his career. Right off the bat, he was an instant success. Pro Bowl in his rookie year 2010, and he even got votes for Rookie of the Year, which is unheard of for a center, by the way. The Steelers even made it to a Super Bowl, but a bum ankle prevented Pouncey from playing. More of the same happened the next year. This time, he took it up a notch and earned himself an All-Pro selection to his man. He was on a historic pace. He got another Pro Bowl the next year and cemented himself as a top center in the league. Truly, the start to his career was on par and above a great amount of Hall of Famers. He sadly ended up tearing his ACL the next season, which sucked, but he was actually able to recover and add another All-Pro to his repertoire the season after that. From then on, he was dominant. He did break his fibula in 2017, but besides that, he remained his dominant self. He played 11 years and retired in 2021, and between me and you, he could have 100% gone longer if he had to. Every year, when there was no injury, he performed exquisitely. He earned at least a Pro Bowl in those seasons. They wanted to add some reinforcements to the line, and well, they got the best center in the league for a decade easily. I mean, not even a question. A+. Pick 17, 49ers, Mike Lupati. It was considered a reach. People thought that he could go in the second round-ish, or deep in the first, maybe, but 17 was a little bit of a shock for some people. Still, to many, you could never go wrong trying to add support for your Alex Smith selection. He was a solid guy, like really solid. He played 11 years, and when you play that long in the NFL, there is no way that's a bad thing. Shoot, we literally just saw Markuice Pouncey's career. He even made the All-Pro first team in 2012. Unfortunately, there were some holes in his game. He was a very spotty pass blocker. Obviously, he wasn't horrific all the time, and at certain points he was good, but especially as his career wore on, it got astronomical levels of bad. The good news for him was that he was always, and I mean always, an elite run blocker and provided ridiculous value to that early 2000s Niners. He even got them to a Super Bowl appearance. Now, he's not Markuice Pouncey, and it's really a shame that he was picked one pick ahead of him, because now he'll always look worse in comparison. Still though, 3 Pro Bowls and an All-Pro team puts him in elite company as a guard. After he left the 49ers, he kind of whored around the division a little, which must suck for Niner fans, but still, he's elite enough to warrant a B+ grade. Pick 16, Titans, Derek Morgan. With Kyle Van Bosch leaving in the offseason, the Titans needed some help in the pass rushing department. And with the 16th pick, they took an edge rusher to replace him. Derek Morgan out of Georgia Tech was a huge riser in the draft. He rivaled Jason Pierre-Paul, who we'll get to later, as the top edge in the class. Now, his career didn't exactly get off to a good start. I mean, he got a sack in his first game, which is cool, but he tore his ACL 3 games later. In just his 4th career game. God damn, bro. That's killer, dude. For a young guy, especially a rookie, it's always an uphill battle to recover from a torn ACL, especially at the start of your career. Morgan kinda did. He ended up starting his sophomore year and actually led the team in pressures. And over the next few years, despite the torn ACL in his rookie season, he remained relatively healthy, tallying 6.5 sacks in year 3, 6 in year 4, and even made the switch to a 3-4 linebacker and racked up 9 sacks in his first year. After 9 seasons in the league, Morgan called it quits. He retired in 2019, ended off his career with 44.5 sacks, which is 6th all-time in Titans history. Now, Morgan wasn't a superstar by any means. His early ACL tear kind of put a cap on what he could have been. What he was, though, was a tough, smart, and consistent presence and football player for the Titans. He was a starting caliber edge throughout his entire career, and was a very good edge too for the Titans. He never made a Pro Bowl or All-Pro though, which makes it a bit difficult for me to rank him in the A tier. While he was a very good player and serviceable for the Titans, when NFL teams pick in the first round, especially in the top half of it, a star is what they expect, and Harmon was solid, but he was not a star. My grade is a B.